All right, guys, so I'm finally checking out the Insta360 GO 2 camera. I know this has been reviewed by a lot of other channels already, but I wanted to sort of give you my perspective on how this would be useful for smaller FPV drones. I don't think this is a camera for everyone, and definitely not for every purpose. This is a specialty camera for certain, I think, situations. So obviously, there's going to be a lot of better cameras out there. You'll probably see a lot of comments down in the comment section that's going to be very obvious. GoPros are better, etc. Bigger cameras with bigger sensors, more capabilities are going to be better for more general purpose situations. But this one here is really going to be good for those situations where you need something very lightweight, and also in those situations where you want something that's going to be not as obvious that you're filming stuff. Maybe you need to be filming things in sort of discrete areas and not attracting a lot of attention. Something small like this is going to be pretty good for that. Now, I have done a review on the original. This is the Go version 1. So this was lighter, not as capable, and I think it was only like a maximum of 1080p at 25 frames per second. But it was wildly popular because this is only like 19 grams, and I was able to put it on these tiny drones like this one here, like this Diatone Tina Whoop. And I think you guys saw that video where I'm flying around the Ferris wheel from like a year and a half ago or so. That's how long this camera's been out. I don't know if they still make this one or not. It might be discontinued and replaced, obviously, with the version 2. But yeah, I did a lot of videos on this guy. In fact, I have several of these, and I've broken several of these. Here's one that partially broken. You can say I crashed it. It's all scuffed up. The case is all scuffed up, and you got a scuffed up lens. This one here is my only currently working one. Like this one works is in perfect condition. This one here is damaged, but still sort of works, and I've killed like 2 other ones. So yeah, when you're a content creator and you make FPV drone content and you crash, you tend to break a lot of stuff. And this is one of the big disadvantages of the version 1 is that the lens was not replaceable. So you basically crash and scrape it up. That camera is pretty much done and almost useless. But now on the new one here, the lens here is replaceable. So these actually unscrew. And let me just go and show you what it looks like here. So obviously, if you fly it around with the lens guard off, and you scratch the main lens, you're going to have to replace the camera. I don't believe they offer a replacement lens. I think you can send it in for repair, but it almost costs as much as the camera itself. It's almost not worth it. So if you crash this and you break the lens guard, you can just buy replacements. And so they sent along this here. I think you get 2 in a box, so that's pretty nice. You don't have to worry about as much destroying your camera just by destroying the lens. Those are available for you. You can also get these ND filters from Freewell. These are also sold on the Insta360 site and Amazon and various other places. They screw on just like the lens guard, and obviously they come in different, I guess, strengths. So there's an ND8, 16, a 32, and a 64. So obviously it depends on how bright it is outside. You can, of course, set up, full manual in terms of the shutter. So I think it's shutter priority. I'm sorry, there's full manual, which you can set the shutter and the ISO and all that, of course. But then there's other modes. I think there's shutter priority mode and ISO priority mode if you want to lock those to a certain setting. So, for example, if you want to use an ND filter, for me, I just kind of guess because it doesn't have to be exact. But if you want to be a little more precise, you can go to full manual mode and set everything. The other alternative is to go to shutter priority mode and set the shutter to whenever double the frame rate. So if you're shooting at 30 frames per second, then you want the shutter to be at 1/60, and then basically match the ND filter to whatever is the current brightness or in terms of your current lighting conditions. And then if you're using shutter priority, the ISO will fluctuate. So if you are flying in and out of bright and dark spots, which you typically will do in FPV situations, the ISO will adjust, and so you won't get some massive problems with your exposure. I just use auto because there seems to, I think you get more consistent results that way. But yeah, so obviously, if you're more into getting a better footage, it's ND filters are available for you. The other accessories, of course, you have these are included in the box, by the way. You get this little hat clip, so you can clip this onto your hat. I did a video already. I made a whole review video on an airplane using the hat clip and also the case. I'll talk about the case here in more details shortly, but this allows you to adjust the angle of the camera as it's clipped to your hat, as you can see here. You can also attach this to a number of other things as well. And just like the version 1, it's magnetic, so the camera is basically attached via magnet to the mount, and the magnet is stronger than the one on the version 1, so less likely it's going to get popped out of there. You also get this, I forget what this is called, pivot stand. So is this similar to the pivot, I guess the mount that was included in the version 1, which is just basically this and this part here. This is the extra part on the Go 2, although, there's a version of this without this part here in the mount adapter kit, which for some reason they didn't send to me. I am not exactly sure. I think they accidentally sent me an extra one of these, which I don't need, instead of the mount adapter kit. So that's what happened. I got an extra one of these. So I got 2 of these and not the mount adapter kit, which is something I actually wanted to show you guys. So I'll just pop some pictures up here of what it looks like. The one mount that is useful is the GoPro style, the 2-prong mount. Basically, it lets you put the camera in here. It's got the 2 GoPro prongs here, and you can mount it to a lot of drones have the typical GoPro style mount, which is going to be very easy to attach and then get basically you're off and running. So I had to come up with some alternative solutions. I'll talk about how to mount your Go-To camera on your FPV drone here shortly. But this is another one here. So obviously the camera goes in here. You can adjust your angle, etc. This slides out. So this is a little wrist strap here, but this slides out, and this is actually stuck in here pretty good. And then there's a sticky pad here, which is actually currently, I haven't used this one yet, but you can pull it off and this will just stick to pretty much any flat surface. It's very strong. Basically, it looks feels like kind of like Umu grip or something like that. So if you know what that is from like battery pads, that's very similar. And you can use that. And it would be nice if this was magnetic. You can stick this to something, but apparently that wasn't the case. You could probably mod this and glue or epoxy some magnets on here if you want to use it as a magnet stand. You can do that as well for things that are metal. So this is the other thing that's included in terms of the mounts. And then you get this same as what came on the Go 1. It's like a neck strap, basically, or a necklace mount. So you put this over your head and put it on your chest, and then you put the camera on here, and it actually, maintains its orientation pretty well. It won't go, it will go sideways too. Yeah, we'll try and lock to a certain orientation. But yeah, you put this on your chest and get like basically a first-person point of view. If you're using it out for vlog type of content. But these are the kinds of things that are available to you if you want to create content with your Go-To. Now, there's lots of videos on YouTube already on the initial reviews that came out about 4 months ago on this camera. So if you want to get better ideas of like kinds of things that people are, kinds of content people are making with this camera, you probably either seen those videos already, or you can check those out on your own. I'm going to mainly focus on what this is going to be used for in terms of FPV content. But before, again, I'm going to get to the drones. We do want to talk about this case. Yeah, it's a much more advanced case than came on the Go 1, which is just basically an extra battery to charge the internal battery of the camera. Again, there's a battery in here as well, but this can also be used as a stand. It comes with a tripod mount as well. And so the battery life with just the camera by itself, if you just, for example, flying around, it's a maximum of 30 minutes, I believe, at 1440p, 30 frames per second. with the camera in the case and the case battery altogether, you get a maximum of 150 minutes of power on time or recording time. So yeah, to keep that in mind, that if you're flying and you're using this for your FPV flights, after you pull it off of your drone, or I recommend pulling it off your drone and sticking it in the case. Of course, it's magnetic, and then it'll charge up the battery in the camera so that you're ready to go on the next one. Now, the big difference here, obviously, other than the fact that it's got this kind of style where it closes up. Oh, and by the way, the camera is waterproof, but the case is not. So, if you saw things about this being waterproof, the case is not waterproof, just the camera itself. But you can control the camera via menus here on the case. So you don't need to connect it to your phone app, although you will have access to additional settings on the phone. And if you want to do other things like with the Insta360 app, there's also like AI editing and stuff like that. With a lot of features in there that a lot of other channels will cover in great detail. If you want to check it out, just search on YouTube, you'll see what you can do with the app. It's quite capable of it. But for me, for my purposes, I think for FPV drone content, I would recommend plugging this into your computer. So basically, you turn on like it here and hit connect, plug it into your computer. It'll show up as a USB drive. Pull off the files to your computer, and then actually determine your field of view, stabilization, all that in the Insta360 Studio app, and then you'll be able to export the video at a higher bit rate. So obviously the main advantage of this camera is the higher bit rate of the video, and also the higher frame rate and the higher resolution. So basically the difference is while the Go 1 was 1080p, 25 frames per second, maximum of 40 megabits per second of bit rate, you get double the bit rate now at 80 megabits, and that's just the raw files, of course. 80 megabits recorded at 1440p and a maximum of 50 frames per second. Now, the 50 frames per second mode is only available in the Pro Video mode. So if you go in here, you can press this button here and cycle through the different modes. There's video, photo, Pro Video, time shift, time lapse, HDR video, slow-mo, and then there's your settings. So you can go in here, and then you can see your different settings. And you can change that. Now, of course, this is just a limited amount of settings. It's not a complete set. So if you want to maximize, and actually use like manual shutter mode and all that kind of stuff, you have to connect it to the app, which is pretty easy to do. Let me just show you really quick here. I'm not going to go through everything here. Oh, and by the way, I am recording this video on a wireless mic here. So let me know what you guys think of the audio quality. Now you normally use a wired lavalier mic, but in this case I'm using a wireless. Let me just go ahead and show you how this hooks up to your phone. And so you bring up the app, and you just hit connect. And it shows the files that you have on there. And then you can go into your settings. And you actually have to go into the camera itself. This is here. And you get a preview. There I am. And then you can click on your settings here. So let me just put the camera down so I can show you this. So it will remember the last thing that you used it on, if you're wondering, if you wanted to do the quick record feature. So you can go in here and change the different video modes. So if you want to access the highest frames per second, you got to go to Pro Video, and then you can change your frames per second to the maximum of 50. Now, they do say that this camera gets very hot, by the way. If you're using it on a drone, they're assuming that you're flying it around and there's airflow going over the drone. So it will overheat. So if you're just running without any airflow on it, after roughly 5, maybe to 10 minutes, depending on the ambient temperature, the camera will just shut off, and it'll give you a warning saying that it overheated. And it's basically, it's because the sensor in here, it's in the 1R camera, which does 4K, but that's one of the reasons why they don't offer 4K on this camera. It's too tiny. When you record in 4K, I think they said that record times are like really short, like a couple minutes, because the camera will get so hot, which is why they're limiting it to 1440p. But yeah, but essentially, it's a 4K sensor in there. But because it's so tiny and the processing power is so high, it gets very hot. So keep that in mind when you're doing your setup here. When you're at the highest frame rate, highest resolution, highest bit rate, the camera will get very hot. You have to make sure that you're flying around, and it also will limit your overall recording time. So you can like fly, and then I think you can. I think the maximum, like I said, is like 30 minutes. But if you continuously are flying and landing, I think that's going to be shortened because the camera just gets very, very warm. So keep that in mind. But here you can see, you can change all your different settings. Obviously, Pro video mode is what you want to go for if you want to have the maximum control over all of your settings. So I'm just going to leave it on 30 here. And then if you want basically to do color grading in post, you want to record in log, which is like a flat color profile. You can then use their LUT, which is in the Insta360 Studio download page, and use that in Premiere to color grade. So that's a pretty quick way to color grade. I think if you use the log or the flat color profile, you get more dynamic range. So if you're using this in combination with the ND filters, you're going to get the best overall image from this camera. If you don't want to do any of that stuff, I would recommend using either the Vivid or the standard profile. So the Vivid is going to give you a lot more contrast, a lot more saturation. It also looks a little bit over sharpened as well, so it's got kind of like a processed action camera look, kind of like on a lot of typical GoPro footage that you see that isn't that they're using, like not the flat profile but the standard profile. And then the standard color profile is just more sort of natural looking colors, not really oversaturated, but a little bit basically just looks more normal. So if you just kind of like want to just record stuff and not have to deal with any of that sort of processing after that, I would recommend going for the standard color profile, and of course use the ND filters to get the best possible motion blur in your footage. All right, so in addition to the case being as like a remote controller, which by the way you can actually just pop this off, you don't have to use the case as a stand, which you can. You can actually pull these little legs out and it'll act as a little tripod, although it's not that stable, especially with the camera in there. If you're in a windy place, it'll get knocked over because I think the angle isn't as wide as it could be. So I don't recommend this if you're using it in somewhere that you're afraid it might fall over, because it isn't that stable. So if you're in a spot where you know that it's not going to get blown by wind or anything like that, it's probably going to be okay as long as it's balanced. But yeah, anywhere where it could potentially get knocked over by something, it'll fall over. So keep that in mind. I would recommend using the tripod screw here instead. But yeah, you can, as long as the camera's on like this and you're connected, you can start recording as just a remote controller. It's a Bluetooth remote controller, and so you can put this into a different mount and then start and stop your recording with this remote as well. You don't have to have it in the case to use the remote control features. So mainly put it in here, and then if you want to turn it off, just long press the button, it'll vibrate, turn it off, and it's going, the red light means it's charging. Close it down, and then basically the whole thing just powers off, and then you stick it in your pocket. That's one of the nice things about this one. It's very versatile. You can use it in a lot of different situations besides FPV drones. But let's get to the FPV drone stuff. So here's where I think this camera is going to be the best suited for us. Smaller drones like these, like this one here is the Firefly Baby, more recent drone here with these 40mm propellers. I had this mounted with my custom mount here, which I put onto a 5-inch over here previously on this one, and so yeah, I'm probably showing you footage of this right now. Because it only weighs 26.5 grams, you're not weighing down with this drone with a lot of weight, and basically you can put this on things that you can't normally put like a full-size GoPro on. So if you wanted to fly this Hero 8 on this little tiny Firefly Baby, it's not going to get off the ground because this camera weighs more than the drone. So that's that's the advantage of the Insta360 GO. You put it on these little tiny things, and you can actually get decent footage now, whereas before you would have to resort to something like a naked GoPro, where you have to strip down the GoPro. And there's a lot of disadvantages to that because, they're expensive. If you buy them off the shelf, I think the GFRC one is like $500 now, whereas this is $299 with all the accessories. Plus, the likelihood of damage is a lot higher on the naked GoPro as well versus this one. And if you crash this one, you can just replace the lens guard if you break it. So there's a lot of advantages to going to the Go 2 over even things like the naked GoPro. But things like a full-size GoPro, you just can't fly them on these little tiny drones at all. And that's where the main advantage of the Go 2 is. Now, when you're actually getting your footage and importing it into your computer and running the stabilization on it, so there's flow state stabilization, which will lock your horizon. And so if you want to have that kind of footage, let's say on a Suno up here, and you want the horizon to be locked, you can do that. You can choose that. Or if you want to have the horizon move as the drone rotates on the roll axis, for example, you can choose FPV stabilization. But for some of you guys that don't like the flow state stabilization or the Insta360 stabilization method, you don't even have to turn on stabilization at on. And so for something like a Cinema, I think that going with FPV stabilization will give you that extra smoothness, but just crop in your image a little bit. So you don't get as much of a field of view because of the stabilization. But if you want the maximum field of view, and you're just going to be flying it like FPV, like say on a bigger one like this one here, and you want to see all of the movement of the drone without the image cropping in, you can just fly without any stabilization on at all, and the footage looks pretty good as long as you have good vibration mounting. So basically, you need vibration isolation here. Camera goes here. It needs to be separated from the drone so that any vibrations from the motors of the props don't get into the camera, and that's going to totally mess up your footage, give you jello, and all sorts of weird artifacts in your footage. But yeah, that's, like I said, this is a specialty item. I don't think it's going to be for everybody, but if you want to use it in certain situations where you need something tiny and discreet and not really attracting a lot of attention, or use it on something that's very light and small and can't carry a lot of weight, then this camera, it might only be your only choice in terms of getting pretty decent footage. Yeah, it's not the best footage in the world. If you're looking for high quality YouTube footage or professional footage, obviously this camera is not going to be it for you. But for things like social media, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and if your audience mainly watches YouTube on a smartphone or tablet, this footage is going to be, I think, in my opinion, good enough. All right, so that's been a long video. Yeah, let me know if you guys want to see additional content on this camera in a future video. I obviously going to be keeping it around and using it in various situations, although you may or may not know that I'm using it for certain stuff. But yeah, if you do want to see additional content on whatever it is that you want to see as potential something useful footage from this, yeah, let me know in the comments below, and I will try and make that happen for you. Okay, that's going to do for this video. Talk to you guys in the next one.